today's topic is one I've been looking forward to for the whole, half year or more that I've been presenting these live streams. And it's the topic, sort of the culmination of all the topics that we've been doing so far, which is refuge, which is a culmination and a beginning, as we will see. So, what am I talking about, refuge? What does that word mean? If I see one of my friends on here now knows perfectly well what it means, but wouldn't hurt, Lori, for me to repeat what your Lama said when you took refuge. But mainly the main people that watch these live streams are actually when it's not live. So I'm gonna talk to everyone now, and I welcome all my seen and unseen visitors today. So taking refuge is a Buddhist term which means to accept the three jewels. That means the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha as your refuge, to make a decisive commitment to them. And why? In order to be free from fear of your own suffering and of the suffering of the people you love, the animals you love, everybody, in cyclic existence. So, as we've discussed many times, our lives are like we're being tossed around like on an ocean where looking only for happiness, never looking for unhappiness, right? And we think we're going to get happy by getting what we want, pushing away unwanted circumstances. Good luck with that in the last year, right? None of us are able to push away a pandemic, which is a classic example of the changeability, that everything is impermanent and subject to change, and anything can happen at any time. And boy, have we found out, right? So my name is Yudram Wangmo, and I live in Oakland, California, and I practice Tibetan Buddhism. Most of these principles today have to do with refuge. Relates to every form of Buddhism, from the Theravada tradition, Zen tradition, Pure Land tradition. All Buddhists take refuge, either formally or informally, tacitly or explicitly. So here we are, tossed around like we're by unwanted circumstances, and then we get something we like, and we have wanted circumstances, and we go, and we're buoyed up and then buoyed down in the water, like we're in a tempest, a great storm, a great hurricane being tossed and turned. And what are we looking for? Safety. Really, a refuge, right? A refuge in the storm. And that's what Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha offer. And it's a choice you can make. This is not, I think it's actually wonderful that we as people who are not heritage Buddhists, who come from non-Buddhist societies, are make a conscious choice about this, because it gives it juice, it gives it power, as we shall see. Because I think that in a lot of Buddhist societies, you're probably blessed as a child, and you're assumed to be a Buddhist. You can tell me if any of you who are watching this are from Asian Heritage Buddhist Society. But it's not a conscious decision you come to unless you really decide to devote yourself to the Dharma or the teachings of the Buddha. It's just kind of a birthright. But for us, Westerners, it's a really powerful decision that we make. And nobody should push you into it. And it's not under anybody else's control but you. So what are the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha? Well, we can go more into that in subsequent episodes. I think that a lot of us have an image about what the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are. So on the outer level, right there's Shakyamuni Buddha, who's the in the kind of Buddhism I practice, is called the Buddha of this eon, like this time. We're in the time period where Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings have come up and they're being taught, and maybe they're declining a little bit. I don't know. It looks like it. And then Buddha means completely purified and expanded. So all negative qualities, or negative, positive, I don't know, but we have been washed away, purified over the long period of development of this being. And then those qualities, the good qualities, have been expanded out, so they're inconceivably vast. And the quintessential, embodiment of that was Shakyamuni Buddha from India, like 2,500 years ago. It's an old religion. And so we have an image of Buddha, however we see him. And then we have an image of the Dharma, maybe the scribes writing down what he said and compiling them into, it would have been palm leaves, maybe. Compiling them later. It came centuries later when they compiled his teachings, actually, literally. They were remembered teachings and then written down hundreds of years later. And so on. And that's what we think of as the Dharma, the written teachings of the Buddha, and the truth that they represent. And then the Sangha at that time was monks and a few nuns. So that's the image. And so you're taking, actually, according to early Buddhism, that's what Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are. And we're taking refuge in them. And that's beautiful. In terms of, our Vajrayana and Dzogchen tradition, particularly a Great Perfection School, and I don't talk much about Dzogchen because I'm not a Dzogchen master, but we have to when we talk about a refuge, because it's really important. It's a really important point that we want to break through and say, what is the most ultimate meaning of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha? What is the, not a provisional, narrow meaning, but deep down, what does it really mean? So, in the Dzogchen tradition, the ultimate objects of refuge are the three kayas, the three bodies of the Buddha that are inherent in our mind stream, our continuum, like our Buddha nature, but it has three aspects. One is the empty aspect, called the essence, or Ngondro. In Tibetan, you don't need to remember that unless you're a Dzogchen aspirant. But then, of course, emptiness. We talk about that in Buddhism. You probably studied it or heard about it. And then there's the Rangshin, the nature, which is like, they'll symbolize with the idea of light, suffusing emptiness, so like a cognitive brightness, co-emergent with the empty aspect of our innate, inherent enlightenment. And then out of those two rises the tukche, which means compassion, literally, like the naturally pouring forth. When you've really awakened your enlightened nature and you've cast off the veils of stupidity, anger, aggression, desire, there's this bright, empty, clear nature that is naturally gives out. Naturally, compassion goes along with that, and activities to help others naturally go with that. So, in other words, the idea is we have a basis or a nature that is hidden, and all of our karma from the past, our habitual patterns, all this thinking mind, What if I talked about like a choo-choo train going down tracks, and there's one track here, and there's one track there, and one track here, and one track there, scattered, and always under the mistaken impression that it can, this mind, this aspect of mind, this cognitive emotional aspect, superficial. Whereas same time as that, they don't really use the word deep down, but we can say, in your heart there is, as a metaphor, there is this awakened mind is totally pristine, totally never gets better, never gets worse, and is continuous through this and all future lifetimes. And it's the same from a little ant, up to some great formless God, or us. That capacity, hidden capacity, is there. And how do we undo it? Well, the first step is actually to make a decision to take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and in I'm not going into all the levels of so many complex and beautiful Dharma teachings from the Dharma scholars of the past, but going all the way down to regarding it as our Ngondro, our essence, Rangjin, our nature, and Tukche, our compassionate responsiveness. Okay? So we're changing our orientation. What are the advantages of taking refuge? Well, Guru Rinpoche, as we've discussed, was really established the Dharma in Tibet for the first time. There are others who had moved into Tibet with Dharma and were trying their best to bring the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, to Tibet. But this great figure, Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, was the one who really established it there. Many great skillful techniques of suppressing negative forces that would prevent its establishment. So that one said, who's come to be viewed as the embodiment of all of our teachers, all the teachers, all of the teachings rolled up into one. The symbol of, ultimate wisdom and compassion is the second Buddha, Guru Rinpoche. So he said, taking refuge is known as what causes you to become a suitable basis for all types of vows. So it's a vow, taking refuge. Actually, taking refuge is not even the way it's put in Tibetan. In Tibetan, which is probably more accurate to the original language than our English version, it says go for refuge, kyabdro. You're going to go for refuge. So it's not passive voice. You're not a passive recipient. You're going for refuge, and you're going to take a vow. And you ought to know what you're getting into before you take that vow. So this is what we're going to discuss. I hope you'll stay with me for this whole first half hour, because at the end of the half hour, I'm going to go through also. It might be 40 minutes today because I always run over. But we're going to go over some of the experiences that people like you and me have had. I've been polling people on social media about what did it mean to them when they took refuge. How did it feel? Did it create any change? Was it of importance to them? Was it nothing? We're going to go through that at the end. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about Guru Rinpoche's points about the advantages of taking refuge. So it's the basis for all future vows. So you can't. Everybody wants to skip over refuge because it's a little bit hard to teach, especially in non-Buddhist society, and go right to bodhicitta. And I totally understand that. But bodhicitta, So, and that's beautiful. But actually, you can't take the bodhisattva vow without first embarking on the Buddhist path. So in addition to being the basis for all the other vows, it actually is what makes you able to call yourself a Buddhist. In the Nyingma tradition, It's not some highfalutin academic concept that makes you a Buddhist, knowing a lot of things, being really a smarty pants. It's taking refuge from the heart, really knowing what you're doing and going for refuge. So Guru Rinpoche went on to say that when the genuine feeling of taking refuge has arisen, karmic obscurations are utterly brought to an end. So maybe you'll be able to see this in your own experience. How does it, all those habits, actually bakchak, and what are karmic obscurations? I'm not remembering the Tibetan for that, but these deeds from past lives that have ripened into today's experience, and are this body, this life, and this panorama, how we frame everything we see, is conditioned by previous lives, and for that matter by this life, or as we all know from psychology. So these habits begin to lighten up when you decide that you're going to take a different path and embrace and trust in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. You will possess vast merit, he said. The mundane merits of a long life, good health, splendor, majestic dignity, great wealth, and so forth result from taking refuge. Now, of course, in a Buddhist society with faith and devotion in the Dharma, you'll find that people think about this supernaturally, that there's a kind of an intercession there. But without externalizing Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as, beings in the sky with arms and legs who are impacting us, even looking at the internal change and that subtle movement towards the unveiling of our true nature could bring about any of these things. Dignity, right? Could bring about wealth because of how we act is different, and all our hang-ups are gone, are on the way to being gone. And splendor, good health, all of these could result from changing our commitment, our mind. You will be immune to attack by humans and non-humans, and immune to the obstacles of this life. Do I feel like less of a target? Yeah, generally I do. Why is that? Because I only wish the best for sentient beings. I'm not bragging. Certainly I get ticked off sometimes. Still. But I'm just saying, once we set our mind a new framework, we don't have enemies anymore. With genuine taking refuge has arisen in your being, Guru Rinpoche says, it's impossible not to accomplish whatever you intend. You will not fall to evil ends or perverted paths. The final benefit is that of swiftly attaining true and complete enlightenment. So true and complete enlightenment from the Buddhist point of view is only possible through the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And I might add, under the guidance of of others. Even, in every tradition, teachers are respected. I'm not putting myself out there as a teacher. But, for the great monks and nuns that teach in the Theravadan tradition, and the great bodhisattvas in the Mahayana traditions, such as Zen and Roshis, and so on, to the lamas of Tibet, the Rinpoches, we need to have respect because they're representative of the Buddha, and actually the Buddha, Dharma, maybe even the Sangha. I don't know how that would be, but let's go with that. So what does the refuge vow require of you? If you decide to take refuge, what are you committing to? This is something that oftentimes people are thrown into taking refuge in a hurry because it's a prerequisite for some other program. I mean, this really happens. And I heard a few stories of that this week when I was inquiring about refuge, formal refuge ceremonies, and we'll get to what that is. Without really knowing what it's about, and some misconceptions can come about. It's all good. It's all positive, but I think it's better to know what you're doing. So what are you committing to? Well, there's 3 things to be abandoned that you're committing to abandon in yourself. So check yourself and see whether you have. And I've been checking myself to see whether I have. You don't take worldly deities such as local spirits as your outer refuge, and you do not make offerings to them. So you've made a commitment to take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So, going around to a shaman, no matter how exalted, this isn't disrespecting other traditions, with a completely different framework, with no enlightenment idea, maybe just a person who likes to make people, I don't know, to enact magic or make people feel better, heal diseases. They're not negative things. But if you then say, this is where I'm going, this is my teacher, then that's not appropriate for someone who's taken a refuge vow. And it can be repaired, but it's really, you really should, if you're going to take a refuge vow, you should say from now until enlightenment, I am setting those kind of, I'm not placing that person at the center of my spiritual life. So having taken refuge in the Dharma, these are the teachings of the Buddha. What is one of the first teachings of the Buddha? Don't harm any sentient being. So that's critical. And so you have to rethink all the things that you may have done before. Fishing being a very common one in our society. Killing insects. Ants in Oakland are invading constantly. Mice invade sometimes. Having taken refuge in the Dharma, you do everything you can to avoid killing sentient beings. Sometimes for the higher good. For example, you have to feed. You're a Dharma center and you have to feed people from a kitchen. There's rats in the kitchen. Sometimes, and you can't. You try to catch them. You tried everything, driving them off. You can't. Maybe you have to kill those rats, but it's with deep regret, and it does have an impact on your mind stream, that killing. So this is not something to be taken lightly at all. Having taken refuge in the Sangha, then you do not associate with non-Buddhist extremists. So people with extreme views means 2 things. One is they believe in an eternal, existing God, like as an entity. It doesn't matter if it's Vishnu or Jehovah. If they have extreme views in that way, of course there's going to be people in our family. We're not disowning our families or just saying, oh, I can't be friends with you like this. But like, when you meet people going through treatment for chemical dependency, they have to break away from a friendship network that was really negative and reinforcing each other for drinking. So especially when you're a new Buddhist, this is the way Lama Tarchen Rinpoche used to say. Later on, that sort of hanging around with people with incorrect views of spirituality that are harmful or inadvisable is not so good when you're a beginner Buddhist. So you'd want to take a few years and just hang around with really solid Buddhist people as much as you can. That's really good, without being mean or rejecting. And I'm saying because we're not in a non-Buddhist society, so we have to work with circumstances. So people whose behavior is contrary to the teachings. So this can create conflict in families. If your spouse, for example, is a fisher person, that's going to create a conflict there in you. Now, it's their business. But in general, if you can, it's better to hang out with people. Don't divorce your spouse, but to hang out with people and seek out people that are not engaged in killing and harming sentient beings, for example. don't think I gave the other extreme to wrong views. The other extreme is, besides believing in a God sitting up there, arms folded, looking, controlling the world, and taking refuge in that God. The other extreme is not believing anything. So the spiritual materialism, not spiritual materialism, scientific materialism is what I meant to say, which is one of the two predominant modes in our society. That too. So, you end up, in our society, there's a real conflict, isn't there, in America right now, between religious extremists on one hand and then scientific extremists on the other hand. You don't want to go to either extreme. You want to stay right there in the middle, and hang out with people that support you in that. Okay? So those are the things to abandon. That's kind of, you really want to think about whether you can and want to do that. Because there's so many benefits to being a Buddhist. Can you? Then the things to be adopted are, once you've taken refuge, you want to practice according to the words of the Buddha, the Dharma. And always try to remember the words of the Buddha and generate faith and devotion. You honor any, also part of this is respecting any representation of the Buddha or Buddhas, many of other enlightened symbols of enlightenment. You don't want to, for example, Lama Pima Dorje stayed at my apartment once, and more than once, and he found that I just tossed I had these images of Guru Rinpoche, my lamas, and so forth, and I'd put them on my bedside table, and they were just piled there. And so he would, when I'd come back in, I'd find them hung on a nail, because up is regarded in Tibetan society, I think most places in the world, as a more positive, exalted position than down, and certainly not messy and disregarded. So place those images in, high and in nice places if you can. I mean, so I understand some Buddhist traditions, they sit it way down on the floor and they put their Buddhas down there. Go with what feels like it's honoring those images. And then, having taken refuge in the Dharma, you want to exert yourself in studying, reflecting, and meditating on the Dharma. And you should take care to preserve the written teachings. Now we have a whole different world of writing, right? Our computer hard drives are full of the Dharma teachings. So it's an evolving situation. But remember, just 100 years ago in Tibet, they were making, sometimes, like with Pema Dorje Rinpoche, he would handwrite. He had good handwriting when he was a kid, so he made some money or something, writing out, copying texts like one to another. They also had kind of woodblock printing presses, but oftentimes texts were just written out. And if you wanted a copy of a text, even if it's 300 pages long, you had to copy it all out in order to take it home with you. So, and you had to make the ink, you had to make the little brush you put on there, you had to make the paper, unless you could find it from somewhere. It was a big deal. And still, we should, and so the idea of putting that down on the floor would be outrageous, So that's where this idea of having, when we're in Dharma centers, putting our texts on the floor and then also stepping over them, you're putting yourself in a higher position than the Dharma. These are no-nos in traditional Buddhist temples, but also in our homes, we should keep our Dharma texts in a place of respect. Even a little tiny bit of, they say, even a little fragment, like a torn off sliver of a Dharma text. Then, having taken refuge in the Sangha, you want to respect the Sangha and who are the followers of the Buddha. So traditionally I said the Sangha was monks, but it's come more broadly to mean in Mahayana tradition, since we're all aspiring bodhisattvas on the path, to mean your friends who are going along the path with you. They're your support. But in the former sense of monks and nuns, by all means, treat them with respect. I don't like it when Nakpas or non-monastic practitioners like us express beliefs like it's, they're lesser or something like that. I actually see this on social media. It's appalling. These people have dedicated their life to Dharma. They've given up so much, and they work so hard for the three jewels. We really should treat them well and venerate them, give them a front row seat, and that sort of thing. But also our really, wouldn't we want, and in the ultimate, in a higher sort of sense, when we're gathered together with our Dharma brothers and sisters, to put them in front of us? Why would we not want that? And to view them very purely, which gets to another level of things. So they say even a patch like the robes of, if there was an exalted Dharma teacher, not me, and a little thread came off of the end of the official Dharma robes, whether it's red or yellow, this would go into a high place. It would go could go on if it was somebody wonderful, wonderfully realized being with just oozed wisdom and compassion. You got a little piece of robes. Oh my goodness, you put it up on the shrine. It's an object of veneration. Boy, am I running over. Oh, me. I'd like to talk. I hope it's not too drawn out, but there's a lot. This is a very important topic. So those are the three things to be adopted. There's supplementary precepts could come along with refuge. So, you'd want to rely upon your teacher, and of any kind of Dharma teacher, without doing anything that conflicts with them. So, check in with them before doing things that you think might upset them, and work it out. Then listen to the teachings that follow the Dharma and the Sangha, of course. Then Patron Pache, our old friend, the cranky monk and exalted practitioner and scholar from Eastern Tibet, added on 5 more from the traditional literature, which is: do not forsake the 3 jewels even at the cost of your life. Even in important ventures, do not seek other methods. Don't go outside of the Dharma. Don't feel that you have to go get blessings from some place, like, you have to go be healed in some other tradition or this kind of thing. It's unseemly. Then do not interrupt your regular practice. Keep it going. And your regular practice could be as simple as keeping one vow: I will not harm any sentient being. Keep to it. Or it could be meditating every day, practicing every day, within reason. Encourage yourself and others to take refuge. I would add that if you're encouraging others to take refuge, don't guilt trip them into it or pressure them. You can let them know you're excited about. That's the best thing with Dharma teachings. Tell them how excited you are that you took refuge or you're about to take refuge with some wonderful preceptor, and without saying you should, you haven't done this yet. Yeah, you've been studying at the center for 3 years. You have to be ready on your own terms and knowing what's involved. Then pay homage to the Buddha of whichever direction you travel. I think that had a specific meaning, like going to the West, I'm imagining, I don't know, the explanation wasn't given, Amitabha in the West and so forth. But also, if you travel to a Thai temple, go, light a candle on their shrine. If you travel to a Japanese shrine, etc., etc. So how do we take refuge? Well, it's pretty simple ceremony. They may add more in, but basically you're saying you get down on one knee, usually, and in front of a preceptor or a witness who can give the vows, and you say, I go to refuge to the Buddha. I go to refuge to the Dharma. I go to refuge to the Sangha. There may be more added in the liturgy tradition of that group, that teacher. But basically that's it. In the old Pali canon, they'd say, Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangha saranam gacchami. Just what I said. And you do that probably 3 times. And the Lama will sometimes, or the teacher will sometimes take a little clip of hair symbolizing, like when the Buddha took a new monk into his Sangha. And, or sometimes they will give you a new name. Quite often in Tibetan tradition, I've seen it in Zen tradition as well, you'll get a new Dharma name. Like mine is Udurmama. And my preceptor gave me that name many, many years ago. And so there you go. I think we've answered the basic questions about refuge. If you have any others, throw them up in the comments. My screen is over here, so throw them up in the comments, and I'll try to answer them. And in the meantime, let's go through. I have a little slideshow with some of the experiences of my Dharma sisters and brothers, and some people I don't even know from social media, about how formally having this ceremony of taking refuge was for them. And I'm going to throw that up there. Let me see where we are here. The refuge experience. There we go. And I even got myself in the corner. Isn't that wonderful? Okay. So Western converts on what it meant to them to formally go for refuge. One said she had to let go of a lot of distrust, and I understand the distrust of Dharma, of not just of teachers in any spiritual tradition. I really do. There's been a lot of, sometimes it seems like for every good teacher, there's some terrible teacher out there. So you really have to decide to trust someone. That means getting to know them. This doesn't mean like finding a guru. That's a whole other thing related to Vajrayana. Any Buddhist tradition you can take refuge in, and it's all Buddha. So, but you have to have some confidence and trust in that person, but not only that, in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, more important than that person. I made a very conscious decision to let go of my disposition to dislike and distrust religious spiritual practice. Oh, practice. If the view, the teachings ring so true, why not open myself to these practices? So she discovered some school of Buddhism that resonated with her, and she thought, this is really what I always thought. This is not weird. I can trust this. Intimacy. I wanted to put this up there. It may seem a little out of left field, but it's not. There was always a sense of intimacy as somebody who's taken refuge more than once. Not necessary, but some people like to do it in the formal refuge ceremony at a real human level. The hair snipping, that bit of oneself getting kept, and that intimacy of getting a name. Those little cards of shreds of paper with names on it in the Lama's hand. So quite often the Lama will handwrite it out, stamp it with some beautiful red seal. Isn't that wonderful? So it really is intimate. It's a very special experience. It's nice to do in a small group. Of course, it's also nice to do in a large group, like with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, where there'll be thousands of people there. But, small is also good, and it feels very personal. It should be personal because you're making a decision. All right. Protection. Here it is, an unfolding and protection as well. This connection determined a destiny of meeting great lineage gurus, absorbing the teachings as guidance, which saved my mind and life many times. Thank you, Claudia. Protection, this is what refuge means, really. But we're also, by forging this bond with the triple gems, and in our tradition, a bond with our inner Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. In a way, we are protected because there's nothing ending there. It's unchanging. Nothing can touch that. Even death can't touch that. So there's nothing really to be afraid of anymore. Of course, we're all afraid, but not all of us. Some of us, really have confidence. And it really felt this in that person's life. It really saved her life. Comforted. I took formal refuge vows with Venerable Tenzin Palmo. I left her name in because I really think you guys should look up Venerable Tenzin Palmo. She's now called Jetsun Ma. Tenzin Palmo. Jetsun Ma. Tenzin Palmo. I love her. Wonderful nun in India. I took the 5 precepts. These are like killing, lying, stealing, taking what's not given, sexual misconduct, intoxicants, like that. You don't have to with refuge, but you can take vows like that. And whether I spend a lot of time on the cushion meditating or whatever situation, I have felt both comforted and protected. Again, protected by my vows and refuge. Serious, committed, and confident. Did it change me? It literally blew my mind. I cannot even express the new energy it gave to my practice. I myself did not expect it to make as much of a difference as it has. But since then, I felt much more serious and more committed and much more confident. And how about a commencement? That's an interesting word. We think of that as like a graduation. For the first time, it was a commencement, a sense of a change and a sense of commitment, as well as a feeling of finally getting something right. So I guess it was a good decision for that person. How about a rite of passage? This is kind of how I think of it. Making a formal commitment can be a transformative rite of passage, something our modern culture has lost a bit of, hasn't it? Even the rites of passage that existed in my parents' generation, things that would happen, like in the South, they used to have a coming out party. It wasn't anything about being gay. Gay meant happy back then. It was a young woman was emerging as a woman, and they would have a big party for her, and she'd get all gussied up and stuff. And for young men, I'm sure there were other things, but there were all these demarcations. And now what is there? The graduations from high schools, blah, blah, blah. Here you get that really power of transformation and ritual, I'd say. It was like a recognition. I felt that refuge had taken place long before. It was nice to be in the company of others, but it was essentially unnecessary. So it was just a demarcation. This person had been studying Dharma for a while. They'd been practicing, and they thought, okay, let's make it formal. No big deal. For them, it wasn't like a breakthrough experience. The breakthrough experience was before, and this was just acknowledging it. So for them, it was like that. A beautiful blessing. It was incredibly moving and meaningful to me. One of the best experiences of my whole life. Now, this person had a completely different reaction, didn't she or he? And I've had lots of great life experiences. Me taking refuge in the 3 jewels had already happened on a deep level. So the ceremony was like a really beautiful blessing of that. So they too had already made the decision. The decision comes before. Heart opening. Yes, it changed me. It was supremely, extremely profound. A physical experience also. My heart opened and flooded. Wow. I'd say that refuge, deciding to be a Buddhist, in other words, is deciding to be the best of what you are, what you already are. And not be cynical, not be shut down and sarcastic and tuned out and yeah, that's the way it is, but really deciding I'm going to go with the love. I'm going to go with the compassion. I'm going to build up myself up with merit, juicy wisdom. Instead of being a negative person, I'm going to be all positive all the time. Kuntu Zangpo, the all good. But not like in a good, bad, namby-pamby kind of, way, like setting one against the other. It's all positive, not half positive, half negative. Orientation. On some level, I'd taken refuge years before, but I'll always hold in my heart that full moon night in a parking lot in Santa Monica as a pivotal establishment of orientation in my life, a new orientation towards life. A new beginning. I am a person who likes ritual. A lot of Americans don't like ritual, right? And my refuge ceremony was important to me. It felt like the beginning to a new phase of my life, and I felt like a real Buddhist. And she was. Shift to Dharma principles. Well, for me, there was a definite identity shift. It continues to help me commit to living by Dharma principles, even when the going gets tough. And it's been tough this year, right? Alignment. It meant I was aligning myself to the Buddhist teachings. I found the change to be a slow evolutionary process. For them, it wasn't a leap. It was a gradual, step-by-step thing. Reconnection, the entire center of gravity of my life became practice. Getting back on the track I felt I'd lost. Reconnecting with my real reason for being here at all. So some people felt that they have past lives as Buddhists, practitioners, and this was just getting started again. They'd let it drop. They'd had the veil of ignorance about who they were, what their purpose in life was, removed. And now they wanted to step forward as a new person, reconnected person. And now finally, I would say this person said it was joyful. It felt as if it was a point of no return. And she was overjoyed. Overjoyed. Okay. So, if you have anything to add, throw something up in the comments section. And if not, I think that we should get some practice in now at 6:48 until 7. And I think like 1 minute before we went on, I thought you pull out, there's a whole practice called Buddha Puja, like Buddha offering ceremony. It's a wonderful book by Nippon Rinpoche related to the Buddha. And so there's texts, we think of Buddhism in the society as sitting and doing silent meditation, and that is really important. But a lot of cultures' liturgy is also important, or the words, texts, in other words. So let's take refuge together. I'm going to say out, and this is just if you haven't taken refuge yet, you can just temporarily take a refuge vow, we'll say, for the next 10 minutes. So repeat after me. I take refuge until I reach enlightenment, in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the Sangha. I take refuge until I reach enlightenment, in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the Sangha. I take refuge until I reach enlightenment, in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the Sangha. Now, we haven't gotten to the topic of bodhicitta yet in all these 35 weeks, but now, of course, in our tradition, we're always doing like this. I dedicate all my merit, including all-encompassing generosity, that I may reach enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. I dedicate all my merit, including all-encompassing generosity, that I may reach enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. I dedicate all my merit, including all-encompassing generosity, that I may reach enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So imagine that the Buddha, he's gold, is sitting in front of you, the sky in front of you. Light rays going out, touching. And there's all these sea of sentient beings, all the living beings. The fish are swimming in the water. And the birds are flying in the sky. And there's many, many, many humans and four-legged animals. And everybody's there, including the people that you have done you wrong. They're sitting down front, right next to the Buddha, front row seat. And I'd like you to imagine that vast horizontal panorama of living beings. And we're taking the Bodhisattva vow here we just did. So let's breathe in all their suffering in terms of a dark, sooty, heavy kind of paranoid feeling. And then breathe out, open, present, translucent, light quality. Keep going. Beautiful. And let's repeat after me. May all sentient beings be happy. May they be separated from suffering. May they never be separated from happiness. May they realize the equanimity of all phenomena. May all sentient beings be happy. May they be separated from suffering. May they never be separated from happiness. May they realize the equanimity of all phenomena. May all sentient beings be happy. May they be separated from suffering. May they never be separated from happiness. May they realize the equanimity of all phenomena. Ah, unborn great emptiness and actual relative truth, which are inseparable, unobstructed, magical appearance. Before me in the sky, in the center of clouds of offerings, as vast as the ocean, on a jewel throne raised by lions, above a lotus sun and moon, is incomparable Lord Buddha Shakyamuni, golden colored with auspicious signs and noble marks, clothed in the three robes of the Dharma, sitting in the indestructible position, with right hand extended in the gesture of the earth conqueror. And the left hand holding a bowl of nectar in the gesture of equanimity. It's like an even. Glorious and resplendent, shining like a golden mountain, patterns of rays of wisdom pervade the space of the sky. The 8 bodhisattvas, the 16 arhats, and others are surrounding ocean of gathered followers. Just remembering you is released from the two extremes of samsara and nirvana. With the blessing of glorious, desireless bliss, the essence of all Buddhas appears. Tayata Om. So there's a mantra or a dharani actually of the Buddha that goes Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Mahamunaye Soha. And they precede it with Tayata. So once, and then they say Om Muni Muni. Sono Tayato Muni Muni Mamunaye So. Tayato Om Muni Muni Mamunaye So. Om Muni Muni Mahamunaye 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 So. All right, so we're coming to the end of our time. So you could put some practice in there. You could meditate, shamatha, vipassana. With the light, being touched by the light of the Buddha, you and all sentient beings equally, you're naturally going to want to meditate. You aren't going to want to stop, right? All right. So we're coming to the end of the hour. Let's dedicate merit. In this text, there's many different dedications of merit, verses or words, The dedication is inside. The words are invoking it. Through this merit, may I quickly accomplish the Tathagata, and through that, may all beings without exception be established on that level. Gewadi nedudain dejan shekbar jungyurni doa chiyamalupa te salagunpai shun. So thank you for joining me. This was kind of a formal, traditional Dharma talk, and I hope that you got something out of it. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye now.